Good afternoon, folks. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you had a great weekend. We are about to take on new software today.
Yeah, I had a question before. We didn't have to turn on anything for the same builder, right?
You just do it online. That's
All right.
But if we did, we have some credit, right?
Yeah.
Hang on, isn't it?
I just, that's why.
It was funny.
We're gonna come back to CM Builder again in the fall. So today we're gonna talk about sort of a broad introduction to building information modeling. We're gonna spend a lot of time talking about this in the fall as well. I would say probably everything we do, about 90% of everything we do from this point forward will be related to that, right? To BIM in some way, shape, or form. That is 90% of what we do in between this class and the construction information management class, for those of you taking that in the fall. So BIM, building information modeling. So let's talk about that. All right. My thing ever works. It's not gonna work. Okay. So this is what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, the world before BIM. What is BIM? Talk a little bit about the different dimensions of BIM. But before we get started, can I get everybody to, there's a switch underneath your monitor, behind your monitor, turn it off if you don't mind. Let's have one conversation. Let me prevent you from yourself. One more day.
Oh, this is different.
Maybe you
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys about this. I won't take very long. I hate doing this dead clock concept. So I'll try to tell you a little bit about sort of BIM and how it has affected the business. It is, construction. You can, based on my experience, there are a few events that have happened over the last 30 to 50 years where you could say before and after, right? So this is one of those sort of events, or not an event. It's not even software, but when BIM became popular in the industry, it changed how we build buildings. That's really what I want to talk to you about today. Again, if you're going to learn about BIM, you really need to understand a little bit about the history of it, how we got here, what does it mean, what it can do, how people are benefiting from that, and briefly I'll talk about your careers and BIM as well, because tools like this are not going anywhere. The rest, for most of you here, are going to work for another 40 years, and you're going to be talking about this every day of your work life, right? So let's get into it. Now my mouse doesn't want to work. Oh. Okay. Again, almost everything was done by paper, phones. It was, whatever you couldn't figure out in the office. That is, again, there was this term in construction that we use all the time. It's called pre-construction, right? what happens before we start digging ditches to pour the foundation, right? In that phase, if you didn't catch something in the pre-con phase, it became a surprise on the project. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, let's take a quick look at the traditional workflow, right? So architects would develop their designs in CAD programs, right? CAD, pencil, Mylar. I don't know if you've ever seen a drafting table. If you go to an architect, if you look at a drafting table in Google Images, right? Architecture office in the 1980s, you'd have, I mean, a big office might have 300 people, each having their own drafting board, everybody drawing with pen and paper and pencil. And we produce what we call as blueprints, right? We don't do that anymore, obviously. And anyway, that's what everybody did. And not only that, you know, as I mentioned to you, you may recall from our conversation at the beginning of the semester that the architect has the contract with the rest of the design team. The little civil guy, landscape guy, mechanical guy, electrical guy, fire safety guy, everybody else, right? Anybody that's doing design works for the architect. So, but here's the problem. You get your drawings, you the contractor get your drawings from the architect, but the architect is basically assembling all the drawings produced by all these other trades. They were not really coordinated. Like, people would just create their drawings based on the layout of the rooms that the architect designed, right? And consequently, this building is a good example of how buildings can be very expensive before BIM. BIM was actually in practice at the time when we built this building. But if you look at this building versus the architecture building, we're both about the same height. If you look at it from this window whenever it's open, Dudley Hall is about the same height as this one. Except that one's 4 stories. And this one's 3 stories. Right? Now, think about it. Is that more expensive per square foot for this building? Right? And what people would do is above ceiling, they'd give you 5 or 6 feet because they didn't want to take the time to coordinate everything. So if it added 6-8 inches per floor, or let's say 2 feet per floor, in terms of your overall height, all of a sudden you got 6-8 feet on a 3-story building. Right? That's a lot of material that you have to use to build that, right? So what people would do is everybody would produce their own drawings separately, and they put it all together, call it a construction set, send it off to the subs or the GC. GC would send it off to the subs, and then almost all of the time we would send off these drawings by FedEx, right? We would print these off and send them off by FedEx. If there was an RFI, request for information, if there was a, hey, I can't quite figure out what you drew here, or there's a discrepancy between what you drew on this sheet versus the other sheet, well, guess what? You had to send an RFI. And I think I might have told you how an RFI used to be sent before the fax machine, right? So fax machine is another event that changed the industry in terms of people didn't have to physically mail those questions. Instead, they would just, you know, feed it to the copier in their office, and then somebody else somewhere else would, you know, print out on their fax machines, right? So it was instantaneous as opposed to 3 or 4 days. Of course, email changed everything after that, but that's how people used to do it, right? And then every week you'd have a meeting, which meant that people would have to travel to go to the meeting, right? Nowadays, nobody travels for meetings anymore. Everybody gets on Zoom or some other software like that, Teams, what have you, and then everything is resolved online, right? Takeoffs, you guys are estimating now, right? All those takeoffs, now you're still doing manual takeoff because you kind of need to understand how to do a takeoff. But if I give you the model will basically spit out, if as long as the model is an accurate representation of what's going to be in the building, the quantities that the model will put out are accurate. You don't need to double check, triple check them, right? And then scheduling is done in isolation from the design. So back in the day, you know, the design was finished, and almost all of these projects were design, bid, build, right? Finish the design, then I can give you a price. Then I can go make a schedule and tell you how long it's going to take. Then I can tell you the logistics of things. Oh, by the way, this only happens if everything you did is perfect. If there's a problem with your design, it's not on me. Right? So essentially that's started really this whole notion of document everything, get everything in writing, type of phenomena in the industry, because otherwise you were liable if somebody sued you for the delay that was caused or for error that happened or what have you. So now we document everything. The consequences are pretty expensive because actually there used to be something called as light tables. You know what light tables are? It's a table with a sheet of glass, just a plain sheet of glass. And then you'd have powerful lights underneath it. And then I'd take my white sheet of paper with my structural drawings, and then let's say second floor structure, and then second floor mechanical. I'd lay it on top of them, and then I'd go through each one to see, oh, what's the elevation of this beam? What's the elevation of this duct? And I would check them off with a green check mark. Every time there was a problem, I'd circle it with a red one and say, hey, we need to figure this out. And 95% of the problems you caught that way. With the 5% that you didn't catch, that ended up being a problem. Right? Meaning, now what happens? What do you mean that ends up being a problem? Well, actually, let me get back to that in a second. The other thing that always happened was these drawings, as the RFIs came in, got updated. Except these issued drawings to now, if you think about a building, there are about anywhere from 50 to 70 people that are different trades that have to come together to finish building the building, right? Now, what's the chance that somebody is not looking at the current set? Right? Oh, it happens all the time. And that became a problem. Now all of a sudden you're building off of an old design. That's not even the current design. And guess what? Now you have to rework, right? On an average, we would spend 9 to 10% of a typical project cost on rework, right? That's how much money. So imagine if it's $100 million project, you're basically saying, I'm going to spend 10 extra million just to figure out a way to, make sure that we give the owner what the owner needs. So what are you going to do? You're the contractor. If you think it's going to cost $100, you're going to charge them $110 because you know you're going to spend that $10, right? So construction costs were very expensive, right? And the other thing, the biggest problem was the owner. I mean, first of all, experienced construction people have trouble understanding 2D drawings if I give them something complicated. Okay? But so what is the chances that an owner can look at two-dimensional drawings and imagine what it looks like in 3D? Right? It's impossible, right? So what ended up happening was you started building and the owner said, no, that's not exactly what I had in mind. Well, that's what the drawing said. You didn't tell me then. I was, like, what? I know I understand construction drawings, right? So a lot of the rework, so it was a headache for the owners too, because now they had to fix it, right? Because eventually they still wanted the project. And then guess what? Now all of a sudden people are pointing fingers at each other. And, this happens still in construction, unfortunately, but not quite as often as it used to, when back in the day, primarily because we've gotten a lot better at resolving these problems before they become a problem, right? And BIM has enabled us to do that. This is a hospital, not the picture, a hospital project in New York, $220 million project in 1998. That's a lot of money in 1998, right? To build that building today, 400 bed, 220 million hospital is like $3.5 billion. Right. So the beams were designed at 9 feet 6 inches. So the beams at the ceiling were 9 feet 6 inches. The HVAC drawings, 18-inch ductwork, were planned at the same elevation. We missed the problem. Okay, there's no room. So the steel guy came in, put up the steel, and left. So back in the day, what would happen was whoever showed up to the job site first would put up their stuff and then leave. Well, the steel has to go up first because a lot of the structure is basically the skeleton of the building. You can't have the rest of it until you have the skeleton, right? So the steel guy has to go first. And once the steel is erected, now all of a sudden it becomes a problem because the HVAC guy says, I don't have enough room to put my ducts. Well, the designer didn't catch that problem when they were designing, right? All of a sudden, there's a 3 week delay and there's a legal dispute and people don't like working with each other anymore after that project, right? By the way, this used to happen all the time. It still happens occasionally, but it used to happen all the time, right? Well, enter BIM. So it's a 3D modeling environment. First of all, BIM stands for Building Information Modeling or Building Information Modeling, right? It's a 3D representation of a physical facility, except there is intelligence associated with it. BIM, sometimes we call them as parametric models. What are the parameters? Well, the parameters are the information about each of the objects. So instead of using lines, drafting tables to draw our buildings, we started building with objects, where a steel column knows how heavy it is. A steel column knows that it has to be vertical or slanted. A steel column knows that at the ends you got to have connections, right? Those kinds of things that we're able to build into that, right? And that's changed everything as far as how people think about it. It has geometric data. It's a collaborative process. And if you think about a building has what I call a life cycle, right? From the time the owner comes to you and says, I want to build this new facility, to the time the owner says, listen, this building has gotten too old, I want to tear this down and build something else here, right? Or rebuild it. And in the process, you may have done 8 renovations to the building, right? But that's the entire life cycle of a building. Well, BIM is able to hold that information throughout the life cycle of that building, right? From conception to demolition, right? And the National Institute of Building Sciences, there is such thing called the National Institute of Building Sciences, and they have something called as the National BIM Standard, and they define BIM as a process supported by technology for creating and managing digital information about a built asset across its entire life cycle. It's a digital representation of a physical asset, right? But it's a process. It's not, yes, it is software enabled, but BIM itself is a process, right? There's, again, I'll get into the more of the geometry and that sort of thing. A brief history about this. Actually, there's a gentleman, he's passed away now, Chuck Eastman. He was at Carnegie Mellon in the 1970s when he said this. He called it building description system. He actually said, we need to build buildings digitally in this way. Of course, that didn't come to fruition for another 30 years because our computers weren't fast enough or powerful enough to be able to do what we're able to do today, right? And Chuck, by the way, left Carnegie Mellon and then came to Georgia Tech, where he eventually retired and passed away as an emeritus professor. In the 1980s, we had some programs, RuCaps, ArchiCAD, these are all former Russian software. ArchiCAD is not that anymore, but it originated in Hungary when Hungary was part of Russia or the Soviet Union. In 2002, Autodesk acquires this software called Revit. Revit is a startup company based out of Boston. From many of the principals were from MIT. There's actually a guy, one of the guys that was a partner in the original firm that sold Revit to Autodesk was from Atlanta. They sold it for, now, what was happening in 2000, 99, 2000, 2001? The dot-com bubble, the stock market was crashing, right? By then it already crashed, right? So those guys wanted $100 million for the project, for the software, to sell the software to Autodesk. Autodesk said, you're out of your mind. Look what's going on around you. And they eventually negotiated and settled for $25 million. Today, Autodesk is a hundreds of billions of dollars for the company. And one of their flagship software programs is Revit, especially as it applies to the building industry. Then in 2009, what happened was McGraw-Hill did a survey. McGraw-Hill is the company that produces something called as ENR. Anybody heard of ENR? Engineering News Record. That's the trade magazine for construction, the National Trade Magazine for Construction. And they did a survey in 2009. There were about 70. They did a survey of contractors, and they found that about 28% of contractors were using BIM. They did the survey again in 2010 and found out that 75% of contractors were using BIM. In 1 year, people saw how much of a difference it makes, and they all started adopting the software, right? And it still didn't become popular, or at least mainstream, until another 3 or 4 years later. I would say 2013-14 is about when everything started to be designed and managed in BIM. And then in 2011, UK, it didn't start in 2011, but they mandated that all public buildings shall use BIM. Now, it's a very different form of government compared to us, so they can say that, whereas that's not the case over here. Well, actually, we kind of do say that. The biggest owner in the United States is, guess who? Who? Sorry. The government, right? The federal government, to be more specific. GSA, Governmental Services Administration, owns and operates all federal buildings. They basically mandated in 2013 that thou shalt use BIM if you're going to build for the government, right? So from then on, everybody started using BIM. And now, back in the day, owners didn't want, even Auburn, didn't want to see a line item called BIM in the budget, right? They probably still don't like to see a line item in the budget. But guess what? You're paying for it. That's part of what the construction services that a general contractor will deploy, right? You didn't have a line item, but there was a couple $100,000 in the budget on the arena project, for instance, the basketball arena project. I know the Province built that, and there are a couple $100,000 in the budget just to carry the BIM personnel for the job, right? It was crucial, right? Because it made all the difference in terms of how the trades coordinate and all that. Today, you can hardly find a project of any significance that a GC will touch without BIM. I don't want to touch a project without BIM if it's a certain size or above. Now, you give me a $3 million middle school project renovation or something, I don't need BIM for that. Actually, the renovation is different, but let's just say a smaller dentist office, I don't need a BIM for that, right? However, if I'm an architect, I'm not drawing anything that's not BIM. So consequently, what's ended up happening is it's everywhere. The contractor may not use it on a dentist project, but they certainly would not touch a hospital without BIM, right? They will say, hey, listen, we can't do this. So there's too much risk involved. It saves us so much time and money that we do not want to touch a project that does not have BIM on it. And then BIM has, again, it not only has the 3D geometry for everything. Now let me kind of lay the groundwork for something that we're going to see in the fall is there's something called as a BIM server these days. What is a BIM server? Well, first of all, what is a server? What do we use servers for? Data storage, right? And BIM servers are just that, to store BIM data. And at the start of a project, we will start a BIM server, or we'll start a project on a BIM server, and we give access to, when I say we, the architect, will give access to all the other designers. And then all the other designers can go and put in their stuff as the design is progressing, and they can see how their work coordinates with everybody else's. If they see a beam, they can reroute the duct under that beam, right? So it is now a collaborative environment. It's a collaborative environment because we're able to now see everybody else's design and understand as we're designing, as in the design team, right? But you know, in the start of any construction project, the first thing that happens is, we go and, the architect and the structural engineer will get together and say, me, what's that? The architect and the structural engineer will go and say, okay, where are we gonna place our columns? Because that dictates how the building is gonna look and feel, right? You can't have a column in the middle of the classroom, that defeats the purpose of the classroom, right? So we're gonna first locate our top columns, and then they can have a discussion. I wanna have a building called the Gory Center. I wanna have one room that is 200 feet long, and I want it to be floor to ceiling height of, let's see, 12 feet. The structural engineer is gonna say, well, I can build that for you, but it's gonna be unreasonably big. That's not the right way to do it, because now all of a sudden, if you say 200 feet, a steel beam has to be about 6 inches per foot of span. You really want a 100 inch deep beam? Right, 100 inch deep beam is about 8 and a quarter, right? So they're gonna have that conversation and say, where are we going to place our columns? Once that's decided, then the architect goes and does their thing, the structural engineer does their thing, except they're now able to see each other's work live, right? As you're moving stuff around in your model, there's a button over there that says, hey, publish this. As soon as that gets published, all of a sudden, the other guy or whoever on the other end sees it. So it's not just the 3D geometry, but we can now add 4 dimensions to it. The 4th dimension being time. I mean, first of all, if you tell this to a physicist, they'll laugh at us. But we borrowed this language from them, right? I don't know if you guys are geeks like I am, but in physics, there's such a thing called as a string theory, and according to string theory, there are 13 dimensions to the world, to the universe. I don't understand it other than I've retained that 13 dimensions part. And similarly, what we have done is we have added other dimensions to this model, as in it's not just the geometry. We are there's a 4th dimension where we can basically build our building on the screen. Right? Now, if you're boring, you don't just go to the hardware store and buy some parts and try to put a plane together, do you? Right? Well, that's exactly how we used to build buildings, 20 years ago. We just look at the drawing and then start building. Now what we're able to do is build the building on the screen. And if you saw a duct run into a beam, guess what? You said, hey, let's stop that, let's fix that, right? So we have, in fact, some of the original spectacular buildings. Let me talk about spectacular buildings, like the Museum of Modern Art in New York, or any one of Calatrava's projects, right? The way they design these projects is in a software called CATIA. And you know who else uses CATIA? There's only one other group of people that use CATIA. Or 2 companies, Boeing and Airbus. They build planes on that, and these guys would build buildings using that same software. Even though it's not meant for that, they were like designing something so crazy in different types of curves that were horizontal and vertical at the same time, where you couldn't design it without some software like that. And then we added 5D, where we could see the cost of the building as the building design changes. And then we added other things like sustainability, because all of a sudden owners were saying, really, if you think about one of the most expensive parts of a building, it's not the construction cost, right? It's actually the cost of maintaining the building throughout its lifetime. The construction, if you look at the lifespan of a building, the cost of construction is very small compared to the overall cost of maintaining and operating that building. What if I could design a building where the power used for that building was half as much as a similar building? In fact, this building being a LEED Gold building, we use a lot less power, and we actually did an energy study. We used a lot less power for the same square footage. I think it's Ross Hall or something like that in chemical engineering. And we did it before the renovations. We did a study, energy comparison, and we were using about half as much energy as they were, right? Now, in a month, it doesn't make a difference. 75 years, now all of a sudden you overpaid for that a lot, right? So energy became a really important thing for buildings in the early 2000s. It still is. A lot of companies still, or a lot of owners still want to go for LEED building, but LEED has kind of lost its charm in that most people are doing all the LEED principles, but not going for the LEED certification. Right? To get LEED certified, you have to pay a premium in order to document everything that you did in order to make the building more sustainable. And then you submit it to the Green Building Council, the US Green Building Council. They'll look at everything and they'll say, thumbs up, here's your plaque, go put it in your building. That's what you see downstairs when you're in the lobby, it says LEED Gold. Well, that plaque cost about $300,000 for this building. And then 7D is facility management, basically as-built model with all the asset data. What do you mean asset data? Modern buildings have a lot of technology in them, especially when it comes to HVAC, low voltage power, low voltage as in telecommunication networks and all that kind of stuff. Well, somebody has to, if you're Auburn University and you're trying to manage that information, you can't just keep it in a ledger called the Gorey Center and then keep updating it, right? It's all on a computer and various computer systems. And what ends up happening is you can digitally check to see what needs to be replaced, when was the last time it was replaced. And then nowadays we have this thing called IoT, Internet of Things. You guys have heard of that? Give me an example of an IoT device. What?
Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pi, okay. Now, an electrical engineer will understand that. None of these guys will understand that. Give me another example that you use every day.
Alexa.
What?
Alexa.
Alexa? Alexa is it gets Internet of Things. Let me give you a more concrete example of what you're looking at is your Apple tags. How many of you have Apple tags for your luggage or book bag or wallet or keys or what have you? Right? You don't? Some of you do. And you know what? I don't know if you ever tried to track your luggage. I lost my luggage. I've traveled a lot. I lost my luggage a couple of times. So I decided I'm going to put an Apple tag in there. And what an Apple tag does is when you go around with an Apple phone, it doesn't have to be you. Somebody else around with an Apple phone, it talks to the Apple phone and says, I'm here. And the Apple will update their whatever iCloud to say this device is over here. Oh, by the way, this device belongs to Anoop. So let me show Anoop where his device is. So one time coming back from Amsterdam, I'm taking it that word. Okay, coming back from Amsterdam, I'm coming back, and the next day is not next day, 2 days later is the Auburn City Golf Championship. So I signed up, I paid for it, all that, and my golf bag's not here. And so I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna buy another set of clubs, so I guess I'm gonna not play the tournament. But I had an Apple tag, and then I could see that the golf bag arrived in the next flight that same afternoon. So the next morning I was able to go back to. I called Delta many times, and they were like, "Well, you have no idea where your bag is." And I told them, "Look, your bag, my bag's right here." And then I went there and I played the sound, and they recognized, "Oh, that's yours. Sorry about that." And they gave it to me. Anyway, so nowadays what we're seeing is these IoT devices are in everything that we have, right? For instance, I can put an IoT device in that light sensor over there. Now that light sensor, what it'll do is if the lights are on in this room, it knows how much light, how many lumens are in here. So it can report back to what we call as digital twin. Anybody heard of digital twin? A digital twin is, imagine a digital model of the Gorey Center, and it shows which rooms have the lights on. it shows what the temperature in this room is. I won't show how many people are in this room, because then that would require surveillance. But as far as amount of energy I'm using, as far as amount of water I'm using, all of those things can be reported back to that model. So you keep a live digital twin of a physical asset, right? So people are managing their buildings in that way right now. So all that to start with got enabled by BIM. So how does BIM change everything? It changes, design, construction, and operations. So very briefly, we used to do 2D drawings. We don't do that anymore. We now do parametric models. Here's the thing that people had to do. When you open a set of drawings, right? If everything is drawn by hand, and I decide my door over there needs to move a couple of feet this way, well, here's the problem. I have an elevation view that I need to go fix and a plan view, right? So I had to revise multiple times, whereas that's not the case in BIM. In BIM, you draw something, you're drawing in 3 dimensions. There is no 2 dimensions anymore. Everything is connected. Everything, you may look at it in 2 dimensions, but you're drawing in 3 dimensions, right? You caught the design errors before they became a problem, most of them anyway. There's, I'll tell you some stories about, things that happened on this campus that ended up becoming very expensive, right? Just because we didn't use BIM during that time. Owner can now visualize what the building is going to look like and then tell you, I like this, I like that, can we do this instead or that, what have you, right? We could do virtual walkthroughs now, as in the owner comes into a room, it's a dark room, okay? And then it's got 360-degree projectors. I can project my space in there and have the owner walk around and make it 1-to-1 ratio so they feel like they're actually walking in the building, right? So all of a sudden the owner can say, I don't like that, I like this, can we change that, right? You couldn't do that with just 2D drawings. And then anytime there were clashes, if there were clashes as in something ran into the other, we caught a bunch of them, but the ones that we didn't catch ended up being expensive. And then there's this term now we call VDC, Virtual Design and Construction. This is really interesting to me. Almost all companies have a VDC principle, as in they don't call them vice presidents. The reason they don't call them vice presidents, because often they're the youngest people at the leadership table, right? You have a seat at the leadership table, and you're most likely under the age of 40. The guy at Braswell is probably about 40, right? Biggest construction company in the Southeast, right? Russell Gibbs. And but essentially this whole office came about in the construction industry. Sticking to Braswell, and all construction companies are very similar to that. Before 2010, let's say, if you graduated from building science and you wanted to go work for Braswell, almost always you started in estimating, because they had about 300 estimators. Today they have about 20, but they have a VDC staff that's about 70, right? And they have VDC people in all projects and what have you, right? So this whole office called VDC, Virtual Design and Construction, came about only in the last 15 years or so, right? Or at least popular in the last 15 to 20 next years. Now we used to, in the tradition of this is how we used to do things, we actually used to still have coordination meetings on site, live, where everybody came down and met at one place. We don't do that anymore, we do it on Zoom, right? But we have basically war rooms where we're figuring out clashes. And the way clashes work is, I don't need to design or coordinate the whole building before I release the drawings for construction. So what they end up doing is, I'll coordinate the foundation, I'll coordinate the first floor, I'll coordinate, if it's a big building, east side, west side, second floor, third floor, whatever, right? So you coordinate, release for construction, and if there are minor issues, to be resolved on the field. but nothing major left to be done, right? 300 to 500 clashes is typical that you resolve before they actually become a problem. Actually, if you run a clash detection model, the model might say 10,000 clashes. But once you start going through each one, you realize that they're not really clashes. For instance, that column coming out of that slab, it will say the slab is clashing with the column. Well, it's not really a clash. That's what is supposed to happen, right? So if you discount all that, you still had about 300 or 500 things that you needed to figure out. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about clashes as we go through. Now, anytime there was a clash in the software, obviously that's $0. But if it becomes a clash in the field, so imagine this scenario. I'm an HVAC sub, or I'm a plumber. I show up to the site. My stuff is supposed to go this way. Well, if I'm a plumber, can I have a bend going up in a sanitary pipe? How's water going to flow? Because the sanitary pipes work through gravity, right? They're supposed to have a 16th or 1/8 of an inch. All you need is a very gentle slope. As long as water always flows down. We know that, right? So if you don't give me enough room for my sanitary pipe to make the run, guess what? Now I got a problem, right? Because I can't. There's no other way for me to do it. If you still want me to do it, I'm going to have to put a motor on there, and every time you flush, I'm going to have to run that motor, right? Well, obviously that's not an ideal situation, but we caught the problem before it became a problem, so that we could tell the architect, "Hey, raise this 6 inches so that we could have this sanitary run." And then the fire safety guy comes and says, "Well, I need to put my stuff here and there, whatever." Except fire safety is pressure pipe, right? So that water is not flowing through gravity, it's flowing under pressure, which means we can bend it any which way we want, right? Ducts, again, we could bend it, but it has consequences. You put too many bends in there, and all of a sudden you increase the amount of friction that the air has to go through to eventually get to where it needs to get to, right? We can't put all the diffusers in one corner of the building, just like we can't put all the lights in one area of the building, right? So all of these things become really critical, because guess what? If I show up to the site and there's not enough room for me to do what I need to do, what is the process? You start generating an RFI. And what is this guy supposed to do in the meantime? Hey, I'm scheduled to be on this job for the next 3 days. And if I can, I'm going to do it. If I can't, I'm going to have to charge you for these 3 days, right? Whose problem is that, you know? Not the GC's. You didn't draw the drawings. You're going to point to the architect, and the owner is going to say, "Come on, guys. Can I not have these things happen to me? Like, now I'm going to have to pay for it because you're saying it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Somebody's fault that we have." Anyway, becomes a problem, right? So all of a sudden, this could add up. I mean, delays can add up very quickly. So as much as possible, we'll try to minimize that. And then also nowadays, prefabrication is a big deal in many of the disciplines in the construction industry. For instance, most of the ductwork that you see above ceiling, nobody does that on site. Almost all of them prefabricated, seal the ends, bring it to the job site. You just stick it up and then pull off the plastic and attach them, and you're done, right? Steel guys, you don't start drilling holes in the steel beams and columns on the site. Now, all that is done in the shop. It just shows up, everything aligns, everything is drawn to a 16th of an inch precision, right? 16th of an inch, because you can't stretch a steel beam on the job site, right? So as much as possible, we're trying to prefab that. Well, guess what? These models that we're creating, those are 3-dimensional models. We can now take those models, put it into a CNC machine, let the CNC machine print it out, right? So all of a sudden, it has enabled the prefabrication guys as well. Robotic layout. Layout is robots. You may or may not think this is the building industry. You're going to see robots, but there are lots of robots in the building industry, right? You guys drive past the building every day, which was built. The brick on the facade of that building was built by a robot. the Performing Arts Center, the Goose Performing Arts Center. You ever get a chance on Google, look at the brick laying robot, Auburn University, Goose Performing Arts Center. It'll show you what that, it's not as good as, this was about 12, 13 years ago when Rayburn built it. It was a new then, but it's become a lot more efficient. There are robots that finish drywall now. There's robots that do layouts. Now, what do you mean layouts? Well, when the structures guy is done, when the slab is poured, there are no walls on this floor. Now you got to put lines on the floor to see where you're going to place your walls. Well, people have to go around and take that purple or whatever line, and then you snap your thread, and then it would leave a mark, and that's where you would put it. Well, now we have something called as a dusty robot that goes around and then draws the lines on the floor. It's just like your Roomba vacuum walks around the floor space. It has instead of 3 people doing that job, there's 1 person now doing the job, and it's going to be super accurate because it only draws what it sees in the model, right? As long as everything is the way the model is shown, it is going to be accurate, more accurate than a human, right? Because it doesn't know if there's no, unless there's a miscalibration error or something like that, it doesn't make errors. That's the point, right? Saves us a lot of time. There's one of the worst jobs that you could think of for a construction worker to do is to be upside down, drill a hole onto the concrete so that you could hang a ceiling rod so that your ceiling grid can be hung from that. Nobody likes that job. Well, now we have robots that do that. And guess what? That robot, that can work 24/7. You know, earth moving equipment, right? There are, I don't think we see a lot of it in construction, but there are many examples where the guy is just driving the cab, not adjusting the blade. The blades are adjusting themselves because it's connected to GPS and it knows what the elevation is at any given spot. It could go up, down, and adjust the blade. Well, why do we even need a guy to drive it then? There are some examples of job sites where there's nobody in the cab. It's a bunch of equipment that's moving dirt around, right? That's we don't see that very often in construction yet, but the mining industry, they're all over that, right? Because a lot of the work that they do is 24/7, and it's a lot cheaper not cheaper, safer. Who wants to pick up rocks and throw it onto a conveyor belt? It's backbreaking work, right? So that kind of a job is not attractive to anybody. So people want to go work in a factory. So all of a sudden now what you're seeing is construction industry, there's such a thing called as modular construction, right? There's a company in Birmingham called Blocks. Anybody heard of those guys? Blocks. What these guys do is they specialize in hospital construction. Okay? Here's the thing though. They build a hospital in Birmingham and they ship it. What do you mean build a hospital in Birmingham? Well, the structure gets built wherever it is. They build a hospital room that gets slid into position, tightened down to the ground, and they're out of there. Is it really that necessary? Well, let me tell you the economics of it. Hospitals are very expensive hotel rooms, right? It could be about $2,000 a night if you stay in a hospital. And let's say 100-bed hospital. If you're able to finish the construction on that 2 months ahead of time, okay, 100 beds. Let's assume they're running at 60% occupancy. Okay, so 60 rooms are occupied for 60 days, right? That's 3,600 room nights multiplied by $2,000 a day. Okay, now, is that economical? Right? All of a sudden, it's a lot of money if you're able to finish. So why are owners always in a hurry? Because there's a business model where they're trying to make money doing whatever they're doing, right? So if your project is delayed 4 months, that's a problem, right? If your school is not going to be ready on July 1, you might as well be ready on December 1, right? Because you can't move in the middle of the school year, right? So now what have you done to those kids' education for those 6 months? All of a sudden they're in cramped spaces, right? All kinds of downstream effects. All right. I got a few more slides. I think we've talked enough. we'll shut it down here. Let's take 5202. We'll start Revit.
So, is them? How has been classified? Is it just the software? Or is it a company as well? Does that make sense?
Well, so BIM, there are multiple companies that do BIM software.
Okay, so they all have their own version.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
them's the content.
It's more than that, actually. So what ended up happening was there's such a thing called as IFC, Industry Foundation Class. In 2006, the government did a study and said, hey, you guys have built so many software programs over the years, they're not talking to each other. All of a sudden, people are having to enter information from one software into another software manually. So they said, we're gonna build this industry foundation classes to where if you describe something as a door, the door knows it must have a height, it must have a width, it must have a wall to be attached to, it must have a door frame, it must have hinges, it must have door partner, right? So I define everything in my software, and as long as it's IFC compatible, any other software can also interpret the same thing. So that's what they did. So it's not one software, but as long as they're all IFC compliant, it's really one software. So I can take a model developed in Bentley and bring it into Revit and vice
It's a
versa.
general guide.
Yeah, you could describe it. But then again, the clicks inside each program, they're different, they're unique. But Revit is BIM. Revit is, well, it's a BIM authoring. If you want to develop a model, you use Revit. But we do a lot more than just developing a model.
Well, see, usually in Cromwell, you have payments, yeah, so you just eliminated the finish. You still have to have your payment.
So you saying that?
Bluebeam is not a 3D software, it's just a PDF software. Bluebeam does not have Revit.
It does not, okay, so
Review, REVU. That's the name of the company.
Bluebeam review.
Yeah.
Not better, thank you.
Are you still doing robots a lot in residential or just in commercial?
In commercial, a lot more in commercial. The reason is, it only makes sense, right now, it only makes sense to do it at scale.
But they can't hang, they just finished,
They
right?
just finish.
Okay.
They finish, they paint, they can clean windows, all kinds of.
Yeah, I just watched a little video, I was like, that's amazing, I'd never heard of this drywall.
Are we just looking at?
Yes, that's right.
Model, that's it. Based off the screens.
Yeah, there's a little more than that's it.
I know, it makes it sound so, but an architect would say that's the.
We're starting with architecture, and then in the fall, we'll do structure.
Yeah, it's just looking by. I think they're probably all have his name date. I'll pick on this. Yeah. Yeah, it was like 3 months. I think there's a lot of stuff because you're just still standing up. So other dudes. But you get a lot of that. And they're on shit.
Just the.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only, let's get the numbers that you got. Yes, seriously, and then after that, this is, you know, way, yeah, see, we're not. I'm so.
Planning robot, they use it on auditoriums. Did a human go and wipe the excess mortar and all that? It was a place thing.
Well, it displaces the bricks, but the new ones, I think they do more than that.
Much. You know, but it's, yeah. We don't know the. You guys more about Thursday, I don't think that. No, no.
All right, let's get going. So go to autodesk.com. We need to do this first. Okay, once you're on autodesk.com, click on sign in or click on education, sorry, education. And then request or renew access to a product. And it'll ask you which product, Revit. And if you want student, select student. Continuing requires verification that you're a student at a qualified educational institution. Continue again. Okay. Go through this and then fill out your information. Don't download anything, but go through this and fill out your information.
Yeah.
Put in all your information.
I know, but are we supposed to put like building science website or?
Oh, CADC are long enough to use.
Okay, then you put the address. We already did that.
Your address, the address is fine.
Oh, as soon as I got.
Oh, the school address. The school address is 270 West Sanford Avenue. 270 West Sanford Avenue, Auburn, Alabama, 36849. Oh, you're already there. So you can, when you open Revit, go ahead and open Revit.
Well, I don't have Revit yet, but I have the next.
270 West Sanford.
I don't need it. Yeah, my name pull.
Rapid West.
What'd you say, put a address, West Sanford?
Yeah, there's 70 West Sanford. Two 6849.
Yeah.
That's something.
That's what I put.
You put 8/27 for our graduation?
They just need my thing.
Yeah, don't download anything. Yeah. Yeah, 2027, I guess, is your graduation. You already have them?
Yeah, I like old setups. It's just a habit from architectures.
You do cat web or other things?
You already know what
Yeah, so I was just like, if everything can say. Well, I set up, what I do is I delete the.
See, it's development. Oh.
They usually hide.
There's website, getting to the. Expires in real estate. You were hired to do educational access to deferred. Now, it may have sent you an email asking you to confirm. Go ahead, check your email and make sure that you're confirmed. Do not download this, but I want to tell you something before you download. When you download Revit, if you want to work on the assignment for this semester, you're going to need to download Revit 2025. So you need to change this to 2025 and download and install it on your personal computer. It's already in all these computers. However, I would not recommend that. I would recommend, because this week we have 2 days, and then next week we have 1 class. That's the end of the semester. In the fall semester, we'll be switching to 2026. So for that reason, however, do not do the assignment on 2026 because we can't grade it. Okay? What does that mean? Either do your assignment here or on the virtual computer. Does that make sense? Either here or on the virtual computer. And then for the fall, I want you to download 2026. So if you want to download it now, that's fine. We are having class in the education building, not a computer lab. I'm going to expect everybody to have your own Revit on your own PC. Okay? So remember that for fall semester, you must have a laptop that can, well, if you don't have a laptop, you should at least be able to use the virtual machine. Right? So if you don't have a laptop that's powerful enough to run Revit, you could just use the virtual machine. But know that the virtual machine doesn't work as well as having it on your computer. Right? So this is the process of installing Revit for your personal computer. Now, I'm not going to install anything yet, but when you open up Revit now, there's an option here called Sign In on the top right. Go ahead and sign in. Sign into Autodesk account. And once you've signed in, you should see your username right there on the top.
Oh, we can get up.
That is, yeah.
Everybody should be here before you do anything. Go to Autodesk on your desktop, open it, the product.
Yeah. No.
The hatches.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
Which that should be had everything. Don't take.
Did you check your email? Did they send you something?
Yeah, you had the completion instead
Yeah,
of.
I just set my
Yes, either.
password or whatever.
Oh, your.
I didn't, yeah, I didn't do some pretty.
So this is, it wants you to do whatever, dual setup or something.
Oh.
There you go.
What is it?
Verify that. So you're on the block, it's actually 8 inches, it's like. Some people.
Yeah.
I like.
Well, it's just started looking at some of the city drawings.
If they kind of show people, there's a, get it on.
This,
Great.
But hopefully, in the meantime, they will figure it out. If they can't figure it out, let me know. Yeah, like, we're not really sure yet. Make sure that everybody signed in? All right. I am not gonna go over the project you guys are working on. I'm gonna work on a simpler project in class. And what I would like you to do is keep up with me. Question?
Well, it's not.
Rosen?
You were trying to just do all this.
Well, yeah, that's all. They'll set up your username based on your email that you use, so. Right click on the bar over here. That's magic. So then you have this next process. Doing it home is what is often the problem. I go, that you problem that. And you can send any load and gas.
You get a big thing in it. You can forward it. To DPI, I don't know. This just where. Yeah. I'll help you out. Right here.
Yeah, what people. It does.
Yeah, yeah, not the reside, but, but, this doesn't confirm my. I swear.
Yeah, you guys.
Take too much marriage and all.
Okay. All right, looks like everybody's in. Once you're in, let's start a new project. Now, there are two news over here, new family and new model. We're gonna start a new model, not a family, new model. Let's click on new. And it says, hey, what template do you want to use? Now, if you actually, let's click down on this to see what options we have. So it says metric multidiscipline or imperial multidiscipline. We're going to select imperial multidiscipline unless you want to draw in meters, right? And we will say okay. Now, it would bring you to some place that looks like this. I would say that Revit is a super complicated software that you're going to use. And I am convinced that there is nobody at Autodesk that knows everything about Revit. They make the software, okay? And if they know the software, they don't know why it is that way because they're software guys, they're not construction or architects or design guys, okay? So there will be a steep learning curve that is associated with this. You just have to expect it and you will get over it. I'll help you, but just expect it that there is a learning curve associated with it. Now, let's close this project. Go to File. This is how we start a new project, okay? And then close, not exit, close right here. File, close. We didn't do anything, so we're just go ahead and close it, okay? And then where it says sample architecture on the side, let's open that up. If it gives you a sample architecture all the way to the right, that's fine. It doesn't matter which one you open. If it gives you an error message like this, just go ahead and say continue and open the file. Jenna, I need to talk to you after class. There's no point in you doing the same thing that you've already done 8 times in architecture school. I have a different assignment for you. You came here to learn, right? All right.
You want to give me a different one too?
Are you an architect too? All right, both of you. Yeah, there's no reason for you guys to do this.
Through this assignment.
Well, there's no point. I mean, you know, what are you gonna do? Relearn the same thing? At least the architecture and structure part, and then the rest. You probably haven't developed HVAC, plumbing, electrical models, which we'll do.
And you're gonna have them.
I'll let you do that along with the rest of us. But as far as these projects, I think it's wasting your time to do this again. But listen to me anyway. So, I don't mean this assignment. Actually, you work on this assignment, but I'm talking about the fall. I'm gonna sort of walk you through what we're looking at on the screen before we do it. First, notice that there's a whole bunch of tabs at the top. It's just like any other program. This is called the what? The ribbon. This is the ribbon, also referred to as a toolbar. But the reason why I'm not calling it a toolbar is, what is this referred to as? The quick access toolbar. Quick access toolbar, and this is the ribbon. And you could do the structural modeling, architectural modeling. If you have structural steel, you can model that along with the connections, right? If you have precast, you can model that. If you have HVAC, electrical, plumbing, you could do all of that, right? And then there's a bunch of options that do a few other things, okay? Now, on the left-hand side, you will see these two toolbars. Sometimes you might find yourself accidentally closing those. How do I get it back? Well, go to View, User Interface, Project Browser, User Interface, Properties. Okay, that's how you get those back in case you ever lose it. Sometimes you've moved it out of the way and you don't know how to bring it back to where it was. Well, this is a little bit more complicated. First, hold the top left-hand corner of a window and try to drop it on top of this one. And it's a little finicky. No, I don't want it side by side. I want it this on the top and that on the bottom. So up right there and drop it. And now drag this with the top left-hand corner and see how it will dock. I don't want it to dock over there. I want it to dock over there. And now I'm back to where I started. Okay? Top left-hand corner of the boxes and then user interface, what have you. Now, this icon right here will show you the default 3D view. Notice that little icon right there? If I click on that, it shows me a 3D view. And again, you can use, this is the cube over here. You can use the cube to rotate, orbit. Now, the wheel is to zoom in and out, right? If you want to look at it from the top, just say top, and it will adjust the view to show you just the top view, right? And then you can hold one of the corners and rotate around. You can hold your wheel down and it will allow you to orbit. Right? Now, if you want your wheel to do certain things, when you do something, you can set up all that. If you are interested, go to File, Options, and you can set up how you want your mouse to interface with. And I won't do that in class. If you're interested, you could YouTube it and try it out yourself. Okay. Now, as far as this project, what I wanted to show you was, first of all, notice that they were able to model the terrain on the project, right? That's got nothing to do with the building, but that's the terrain on a project, okay? And then also notice on the left-hand side, it says floor plans, right? And it has floor plans enlarged and it says floor plans. For now, let's just focus on floor plans. When I click on L1, it opens up something that looks like a floor plan from a typical PDF file, right? This is the actual architectural model. So what I'm saying is, when you draw something in Revit, if I am not drawing in 2 dimensions. Everything I do is in 3 dimensions. But I can cut at a certain point and look down and call it a floor plan, right? If you take a building, if you take this floor, how do you generate a floor plan? Well, if I cut it at the top, so let's say 4 feet above the ground, I cut it and I look down, I will see this room in a floor plan view. I can show all the furniture, but I can't show the television. Because again, I cut it at 4 feet, it's above 4 feet, so I'll see everything 4 feet and below. Does that make sense? So imagine an object, you're gonna cut it over here and say this is the ground floor, this is the first floor, this is the second floor, this is the third floor, and so on, right? So, but in reality, you're building this. You're not really building one floor at a time. You're building this whole thing, you're saying this is the ground floor, this is the first, this is the second, and so on. Right? So that's how this program works. Is yep.
Ideas about like putting L1 or board plans and mine with the stainless architect, the cover page.
Is there a thing over here open?
Just this covered.
Yeah, click on that little icon that'll bring up 3D. And then you can click on this L1 to bring up the floor plan. Now this cover sheet is only basically, this starting to look like a typical construction drawing, isn't it? And that's basically somebody created this in something called as sheets. We have something called as sheets, and somebody developed that under sheets. L2, again, an expansion of that. And then R2 and R3 may be roof 2 and roof 3. Okay? So, this is how this program is set up. Now, on the left-hand side, this project browser has many different aspects to it. First, it has floor plans, then it has floor plans, life safety, maybe even structure, maybe even 3D views and different things, maybe even HVAC drawings and so on, okay? And this is where you browse different parts, different aspects of the project, okay? And then you have something called a sheets. Sheets is where, so if I open a sheet, this is what will get printed. If I eventually want to create a printout of my design, which is what architects want to do to produce blueprints, this is what you can make it look like, right? This is what we've been, now if I open my Bluebeam, that's what it looks like, my floor plan, right? Because it got printed from here. And notice the different floors. If I scroll down here, there's something called this elevation, building elevations. If I say east elevation, right? You will start to see that looks like this, which is basically, if I stand outside and look at it from the east side, what will I see? That's the east elevation, essentially. And you see all these lines, these blue lines, those are called levels. A level should be interpreted as a floor. I just showed you where I would cut it and say that's the first floor. A level is basically where I cut it in the three-dimensional view so that I can look at it from the top. Okay, that's what a level is. And then elevation views, you could look at different elevation views. Now, this elevation is in black and white, and there's some color, looks like, but not everything is in color. Well, you could change all of that by, notice on the bottom, it says detail level is medium. I'm going to change that to fine. Somebody locked this view. Somebody locked this, so I can't open that, but I'll show it to you in a different project. But you'd be able to change all of that to see in 2D and 3D eventually. Now, let's, so that's the basics, is the floor plans is where all the magic happens. The 3D view is what it looks like in the big scheme of things, okay? So now let's get back and open up a new project where we will start something. So new model, not new Revit, okay? New model, Imperial multidiscipline. And then in order to get rid of these, so there are two ways to select something. Notice if I draw a box from the top left-hand side, nothing gets chosen. However, if I draw a bigger box, what did anything get selected? What got selected was that little bubble over there, the east elevation bubble. So if you want to delete something, they gave us some guidelines. I don't know why they decided to give guidelines. This only started in like 2 versions ago. But anyway, in order to delete or select something, if you draw a box from the top left, everything inside the box gets selected. On the other hand, if you draw a box from the bottom right, everything the box touches gets selected. That makes sense? So I'm going to select those 2 lines and just delete them. Yeah, delete it.
What?
What now?
The second part, what the box touch?
So if I draw a box from the bottom right-hand corner, I can, whatever the box touches, it picks up. Okay? But if I draw a box from the top right-hand or top left-hand, anything that's completely inside the box gets selected. Okay? Now, before we go anywhere, when nothing is selected, what you're seeing is the properties of the view. Scroll down to the properties of the view, and then where it says crop region visible, uncheck that. Don't select anything, just click in the white space, and you should see these properties. Where it says scope box, change that to none. And then there should be a crop view that was now visible. You can uncheck that. Change the scope box to none and uncheck crop view. And now let's delete that box. And then it's telling us which direction is true north and what is the scale and all that. We don't need that. I'm going to select it, delete that as well. So I am looking at this after I'm done.
How did you delete your, what is it, scale?
So
You just click on it. That's what it only does.
So if you're here, I just selected that box and deleted it with my delete icon on my keyboard. There's a delete icon on the keyboard. Okay, now scroll down on the left-hand side and change. Again, you see the delete on your keyboard? Yeah, so select it by clicking on it or drawing. Yeah, once it's selected, notice how it turns to blue and just hit delete.
Here?
Yeah. Yep, delete all. Undo. Yeah. So what I want you to do is draw a box. But don't select these.
You're making select.
Okay, now select these 2. And then on the left-hand side, scroll down to scope box, change that to none. And then uncheck the crop view and crop region visible. All right, everybody should be here. Now let's first create, let's say my building is 3 stories tall. My building is 3 stories tall. And the floor to ceiling height or between levels are basically floor plans, okay? Between levels is 15 feet, okay? So open up one of the building elevations, click on east elevation, let's say. Right now it's showing me L1, L2, and then L2 is at 12 feet. Click in that 12 feet, change it to 15. Now, if I say 15 and hit enter, it will interpret 15 as being feet. You don't have to enter the feet symbol. But if I wanted 14.6 instead, I click on that dimension, push 14, space 6. That gets interpreted as 14 feet 6. Okay, but I want to leave it at 15. Now, while I'm still here, notice this is the ground floor. That's the first floor. I want a second floor and I want a roof. So in order to draw that, in the architecture tab, I'm going to select level. And then I'm going to hover over and say, well, about 15 from there. Now, the way this works, this is interesting. Take a look at this. If I hover from this distance, it's moving in 6-inch increments. You see that? But if I zoom in and now hover, notice how it's using 1-inch increments. So the more you're zoomed in, the more precise it gets. Okay, question. So east elevation, architecture tab, level. And then at 15, I'm going to say, yep, draw. And notice how it's giving me the guideline. And then paste it there. I'm going to go to one more. Yeah, it's grayed out, right? Yeah, let's fix that in a second. Now, L1, I don't like calling things L1. Oh, well, actually, for now, let's leave it like that. We'll worry about that later. But you can rename these, my point. If I say O1 dash first floor, notice I can rename that. Escape, double escape. Anytime you want to cancel out of a command, double escape will get you out of the command. Okay, I've renamed my views to O1 dash first floor, O2 dash second floor, O3 dash third floor, O4 dash roof. Okay, now let's bring in. So notice on the project browser where it says floor plans, it does not show me, it shows me L1, L2, but it does not show me O1 first floor, O3 third floor, O4 roof. So what I'm going to do is go to the view tab. Once you've done this, once you've drawn these two other levels, like I just showed you, go to the view tab, go to plan views, floor plan. All the views that do not have a view associated with them will show up. Select both of them by holding your shift key and say okay. And notice what happens on the left-hand side. Now you have L1 architecture, L2 architecture, O3 third floor, O4 roof. That L1 architecture, L2 architecture, I want to rename those to my views. So I'm going to delete them, go back and recreate those views, floor plan, and then now mine are called O1 first floor, O2 second floor, O3 third floor, O4 roof. Now the reason I named them that way, O1, O2, O3, is otherwise it will come in as alphabetically ordered as opposed to logically ordered. I want my first floor, I want my second floor, I want my third floor, I want my roof. Right? If I don't put the O1, O2, O3, O4, it gets sorted.
You just deleted. The two.
Yeah. And then go to floor plan, and any view that you created that does not have a, or any level you created that does not have a view will show up and say, I want to create those too. So when we're done with this, you should be somewhere where I am. Just go back to architectural level, and then just draw it. Doesn't matter where you draw it. You can always change it. Okay, draw a line. Click once and then go all the way across. Is it still held? Pull it down and then release it.
Yeah. I don't know why that problem. I have it right now.
Yeah.
But there's only two.
Yeah, like the other two already have views associated with them. They're already L1 architecture, L2 architecture, or those.
You don't want to. If you need another view of these, that makes sense. So, but
So select both of those, or you should keep it on here. And still. Get the other two and have it. Everybody good so far?
I missed it all.
Oh, yeah, that's fine, just delete those two. And go on.
Oh, no, I got it.
Okay. Oh, it's stuck.
But then you bring it back. Because I'm here, so how do I say this?
I like those. But I just scroll
Yeah, yeah. And then I. You gotta read that. Big dimension and like texture is like that. Now it's just.
Just follow along. All right.
It's really not nice.
All right, guys, let's, in the interest of making sure that everybody's able to keep working, I know some of you are going a little slower than others. But I can't wait for everybody to get caught up before I do the next thing. I will come around and help you do some hand holding. But in the meantime, I do want to show you a couple of more steps so that we can get going. All right, everybody else can start as well. Now, when I open a set of drawings, I'm going to open up the drawings for this assignment on Bluebeam. I just want to show you something. Okay, if I go through these drawings and get to the architectural drawings, I have floor plans. And in A4.01, I have what? Levels. The same way we created levels, they also created levels. So you know that in this project, they used Autodesk to build the model. And also, if I go back to the floor plan, any floor plan, what do I see? These are called what lines? A, B, C, D on one side, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side. Grid lines, column lines, what have you. Grid lines. So let's go ahead. So I just created my levels. Now let me go ahead and show you how to create grid lines. And this is the next step that you have to do. Once you've done it with me, then I want you to start a new project and start developing the grid lines and the levels for the project we're working on. Okay, that's the first step. Anytime you're doing grids and levels, start with levels first, then grids. Okay, levels first, then grids. All right, let me show you how to draw a grid line. In fact, I want to show you how to draw maybe, let's say, 5 going this way every 25 feet, and then 5 going north to south or top to bottom every 20 feet, let's say. Okay, so instead of drawing one at a time, I'm going to go to the architecture tab, select grid. So this is a 2-step process, right? So you're going to watch me do this. Select grid and let me draw one of them. Okay, I'll draw one. And then I will say, hey, I want these to be not 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's start with A, B, C, D. So I'm going to click in one and I'm going to say A. Right? And now I could draw another one by selecting grid and then go over here, hover over here. And then, no, now it's moving in 4 feet increments. So at 25 feet, I could draw another one. Or I could do multiple by doing this. This is called creating an array, meaning I want to copy and create a bunch of them, right? So here's how I might go about doing that. I'm going to say, go to the Modify tab. I'm going to click on that tool called Array. Okay, click on it once and then go 25 feet. Come on, where are you? Okay, now I can do it. Click once and then go. Again, you could, if it's not going exactly, first make sure that it's at 90 degrees. But if it's not going exactly 25 feet, let's just type it in 25 on your keyboard and hit enter. And it says, how many copies do you want me to make? So let's say I want 10 copies. So there's my grid going in one direction. And then I'm going to select them all and ungroup them. If they're grouped, they won't let me do a lot of things that is independently manipulate them. So let's first ungroup those. Right? Let's do this again, just so everybody can watch it again. I drew one grid line. Now I want to create 10 copies. I'm going to select it first and then click on the array tool. And as soon as I clicked on the array tool, notice there's little dashes and lines came around it. Click on it once and then go however far, but at 90-degree angle. I'm going to type in 25 feet, 25, hit enter. It says, how many copies do you want? I want 10 copies. And then I'm going to select them all again by just drawing that line from the right-hand side and then ungroup them. Oh, but this elevation view is now inside of my grid line. Well, let's draw a box from the top left-hand corner on that elevation view and just drag it out to the outside. Right? That's how I created those grid lines. Now let me create grid lines from the opposite side. So I'm going to select grid. Well, guess what though? It went up to J on those grid lines. Now it wants to start back up at K. Well, I don't want that. I want all of these to be at, I want these to, the horizontal grid lines, I want them to start at 1. So I'm going to type in 1. And this time, let's say I want 35 feet and I want 4 of them. Not 35, let's go with 40 feet and 4 of them. Right? So I'm going to say, click on that. Array tool. Click in there once again. And then I'm going to type in, I want 40 feet. Okay, there's 40 feet. How many do you want? I want a total of 4 of them. Okay, that's 4 of them. And once again, I got to ungroup these. I'm going to select, draw a box around, starting at the bottom right. So only those grid lines are selected. And now I can ungroup. Now, but remember this, if I accidentally select something that's not part of the group, notice I don't see that option to ungroup. So only items that are part of the group need to be selected in order to ungroup. Okay. That's how you draw grids and levels. And I use the array tool so that I could draw a bunch of them at one time. Does that make sense to everybody? And it doesn't matter what floor plan you draw it on. Any other floor plan you go to, you will now see the grids. And this is because we drew the levels first. If you had not done the levels first, then sometimes you don't see the grid lines on that place. So if you've practiced along with me, what I want you to do is save this and call this in-class practice. Save it, call it in-class practice, save it wherever you like. Okay, let's close this project if you've already done practicing and open a new model, and that one's going to be called BIM assignment or Revit assignment. Right? And for that one, what I'd like you to do is go to A4.1 first, and then 4.01, and draw the levels for a new project. Delete the existing ones once you draw the new ones, or you can modify them. After that, draw the grid lines by going to one of the floor plans. Let's do that, and I will show you what next after that. In the meantime, let me walk around and see if I can help folks.
Supposed to save it too. You just do your computer.
Whatever you, I'll save it to my box or OneDrive. That way I have access to it from off campus as well.
Click, but how does it say?
No, you close that. Close this. Yeah. Yeah, so now ungroup those. So, yeah. And it's like, oh, the other ones, so you ungroup those? Oh, okay. Okay, now this is the in-class practice, right? Okay, save the in-class practice and then start open that, go to A4.01. So read all these just like we did. You don't see what?
Yeah, but using,
Measure.
this sheet represents, and then what's annoying is,
there is all these wall details, but then it says see wall, see wall types, but there's no wall type reference figure back in time.
I'd be thinking when you hear it, so when that you go.
What? You're back to it there. Good layer, like, yeah, that be another way to do it. So at least it might just go back.
The only thing that's.
Some reason I've already saved it, just like. Where did I say it? Yeah, just here.
I think the PDF, so I was insert. The top ribbon, there's better on. Right next to it, it's gonna be and then I did a link PDF. I've never had one. And then that's a PDF in there.
Let's give them the next one to our thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. Fabulous thing. Yeah, they've shown. And that's saying on television.
So one on that side.
Sometimes it helps see
I
better.
don't use this, I don't barely use it. You just kind of gotta find your workflow and what makes sense for you. I started, that's how I always go. I set all my heights. And then
I just say,
save all my data line, whatever in that file,
So
but
like we do Thursday, you start out.
I like to start.
Baseline. You either see that, you can either start out and plan or you can.
I don't know. And
I think that's some kind of.
what you say.
Oh, yeah. Still didn't come out. I'm so excited because they can't.
like it's not gonna come in at scale, they're actually. Yeah. And they're even select the page you want to, and bring it in, it's not gonna like.
We need to. See what it says anywhere.
And they source page 25.
And the other one was like. Johnny the check. How did you get this? You gotta. Yes. Oh, the other one's, yeah.
Anywhere, I gotta get it scale, and this is kind of where you just want to fall for it. Yeah, it's like illustrated online. And then draw a line and look out for the. Will be specs and look like. I would even like somewhere that you have. Yeah, that would be like here, so there, so then I would do the hand pay. Outline, the line, generally in the right area. Yeah, because we're going to be trading with the PDF, so it's just not gonna happen.
Okay.
And I would-
Alright, and then you can just go. Whatever. It'll be much better if you want to.
Right, just go on another level.
We're getting a bit too personal.
Father, son, math.
Yeah, like, I'll get it all. Now, I have my PDF, and I have this one, this four people, it's inside faces, Steve Muse, that Steve Muse. You know, it's on PDF. I don't know if there's any.
All right. Let me show you a trick.
That's for this line. It is in the PDF, but PDF.
I'm gonna, all right, I'm gonna draw a grid line. This is what you guys are gonna have to do. So let's rename that to A. So let's say you want to create an array. And let's say I have 7 of them. So I'm gonna go to the modify tab. I will say, let's create an array. Click on array, click on the line. Okay, so let's first select the line and then say array, click on the line and then go a certain distance. It doesn't matter what distance. Let's say 30 feet or 32 feet, it doesn't matter. And then let's say we got 7 copies. Okay, I've got all the copies. I'll first ungroup them. Okay, but here's the problem. My grids are not evenly placed. They're at different distances. How do I fix that? For instance, the first one is at 35 feet. I'll select the first one and say, hey, I want this to be 35 feet. Now, if you change this other distance, that doesn't move this line. In order to move this line to, let's say, 12 feet, you got to select that line and then change it to 12 feet. Let's say this one is now 22 feet. The next one is, let's say, 40 feet. In other words, don't select it and only change the distance on the left, not the right. That makes sense? Just to be consistent so that all your grid lines will go where they're supposed to go.
I can say,
Grid lines don't always become a elevation.
link video.
So first, let's recreate this, right? So and then you can rename that.
Did you already figure out where you put that? Probably under desktop.
Or no, really?
Well, we got this change over like, oh, you know, I need one more to talk somewhere.
No, you should put it.
I said, rename each one by this number 85 and name it there.
But
And then I change this. I should be saying, well, that's the reason.
Look at that.
Then,
That's all.
Oh.
That's all I
now
know.
they're all at the right place.
You want the whole thing.
So you're just gonna go, you can. You're at the end, you're right. So you want to go over it. They don't have.
It's not.
Right. Remember what's on here? First of all, let's click that little button right there at the top. That, this, that there. No. Scroll down.
So is everyone?
Change the box design. And I'm sure if there's two units.
Now, I need to blend it into.
Open your elevation on the left on the project browser, and then look at E 4.01, recreate those levels. Right, so.
I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Delete them and then recreate them, you don't. So they get.
Yeah, so is it, I mean, it's, right.
Yeah, it's the same.
You just feel like
That is in their packet. Okay, just leave it. Yeah, but down there, go to the level in the floor plan. Grids are in the floor plan, levels are in elevation. So open floor plan, any floor plan. And now draw the grids from any other of the floor plans are there.
A201.
And now I have.
So, put on lots. And this box here, put that, but you put it in there. You want to get rid of it on that thing, like that one. You have to guys that use- For project management class, you go line, grid spacing.
And then you add it, right? And then you just like do two.
Oh wait, I gotta do.
Windows again. You don't want it to. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they're.
Look at how you make the.
Look at all the hospitals.
Yeah.
Portraits, that is
That's what I do though, right? Select.
Selected. Okay, first.
Try to make it work for it.
And then all your grid.
Now go to the bottom.
That should be have our color.
Click on it.
Sideways.
Did you do this one? Click on it.
In the process of.
Yeah. So why it's thick? Then it's. For a certain distance.
Oh, yeah. That's the project program, so it's not drawn in the walls and stuff.
No, you don't have to. It's
But
just type in.
you get started with the elevation, it's kind of. Obviously, that there. And I'm gonna draw all of these.
How many people have to show you?
And they're all the same. Create good real estate, but
This is.
But you can try to space it.
Okay, and then.
Ungroup
And then
those.
grids on the elevation thing, I gotta go to construction.
How do you want to-
Just trying to get
Select them all.
Draw
boxes this way. How's that? But don't select anything else. Only the lines.
This, yeah.
So I, that's the one, that's how I do it, they're gonna annotate. And then you can also tell like, super long,
This line?
13.8.
Figure out what the distance is
Like
between
how
each line and then put it in.
The distance, more accurate, you're gonna get it, but yeah, I mean, I set the detail on it, and then I draw. That's how I do mine, but.
And how do we switch over? After you get the elevation?
Into the floor plan. Open any floor plan and you could do it there.
A201.
Yeah, I mean, I have that problem, like, what do I click on that?
Not A201, those are the. It could be that the grids are better in the structural drawings.
Where they just line it.
All right, guys, so the distances between the grid lines are accurate on S 1.01. By the way, how do you enter 36.975 in Bluebeam? Why, this is how we do it. If I have a number that is 36.975, I would say 36 space 9 space 3 divided by 4, and that becomes 36.975. Right? So you could move your grid lines by using this drawing. S 1.01 has all the distances. Not on my drawings. Look at one on you.
That's the elevation or
A 1.91. Scroll down.
It's like Saturday, like
You have the entire sheet. Over a certain distance?
No, I was just showing one.
I thought you were just moving the grid line.
No, no. I was gonna say, put off this one, so that. Then see if there's like- Here. Oh.
Sounds like-
Do we have to put that dash here?
Close this. Close this view.
What do you mean by close the gap?
Like, zoom out.
This here, right here?
Let's get rid of this. Shape to the properties.
Yes, that's what it's for.
So now we create that.
Wait, I don't know, but what happens to my elevation? On this one? So it's two, it should be on two.
When you draw the grid lines, you will see them on both elevations and levels. You will see 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side, the east elevation, the A, B, C, D on the north, south. Wow, that's why it's going something.
Hey, why is mine yellow?
What's
Country.
just
Here
here in the middle.
X.
What's that?
No. It's good. I think there's 7 or 8.
And then grab that stuff.
I think 8.
Yes, 14.
6. There's one more there, so 7.
Oh, to get it, give me a print to.
Whoa, no.
Scope box. What's the scope box? Okay, go to process that. Yeah, yours is done, and then you split that.
Yeah, so you're in like a model.
What's the distance?
From that.
And then you can change it like each one.
Because I couldn't see the distance between them, like.
Yeah, like that.
Yes. Show me how you did that, so I could do these guys.
Can I go just opening that individual thing with this? You can edit all your tag.
And then
No.
you just have to
Click on
the check mark.
Yes, and you check mark, yeah.
Well,
Just draw another one. You go. You wouldn't want to.
I would do some better.
This big and you look that fun. Yeah, that's fine. Just leave it like that. One second. You need to go into the place. You look them all. So you can go in and rename those later.
Okay.
But click on one. So it's like distance. Okay. Change that number. Pretty.
Anything else, I would try.
36.
Check.
9.
Look, now, it's kind of like that.
So, good connection. I'll change this one over.
Yes.
That's that cost.
Here, software level.
Levels. Yes.
Under village, by the.
I missed that one.
X.
Yeah, when you pull the other, I guess.
Yeah.
So I've done these. If you did it wrong, but they need to be this way. So, listen.
Mine.
Elevation. Sorry. I did this, another good line down. This way. Name that A, and then we'll just move a little next one. So we can. It doesn't have this thing. Elevation, you're going to. Elevation. You only do level, you're not wanting to. You got one of these, that's right. Like these were supposed to get one. These are supposed to go in this direction, yeah, but you wanted. It's like two separate sides. It's okay. How do we make the? When I moved it. No, okay, okay, I think your number's really wrong. Let me put. You're supposed to be this way, right?
Your floors are right, just delete your floors and then you know.
Notice how these are supposed to.
They lie.
No, but it's still.
If they say we're to go to the east, it should be there. Yeah, every elevation is gonna be different, so like. So like, If you look at it, like the tags are gonna be different, but that doesn't really matter right now, so it's not good down that road, but like. Those should all be the same. You go to the east, click on east. Automatically be there. Just gotta know.
What if the elevation? Like, what if? It's like east of another.
Yeah, I would. Part of it inside me, but just going up, get that.
So.
It's like, is there, I have like my projects at work, I have like mine, hours of sugar levels. I want you to show all of those, so let's go like. This work stuff, and then all the other ones are tied, and certain elevation, and it shows like, I was like.
Make sure it's.
And then as soon as yes,
But if you were to print this.
Okay,
Paper.
yes. Okay, this is like a ton of time easier, so this is all open shots and.
All the ones that look like a house or an elevation view, and anything that looks like a box with a square in it. But yeah, those are all levels, and then level is what tells like the plan where it's at. So like right now, your level 1, which is level 1 architectural, is kind of 4 feet off of the bottom of that level. So think like your surveying, you're setting your driveway, it's cutting like 4 feet above that line. Across the whole town.
So.
It doesn't, it's just kind of like a, yeah.
So where did
You can tweak it, change it somewhere. I would go to the short form plan, that's gonna give you the accurate dimension. Because the architecture is gonna give you texels at the base and the storefront wall or whatever, the structural is gonna be actually to the grade. No,
It's just a cute one.
you have to plug that in there for me to grade over the. You'll just go to a floor plan, and you'll go to structure, grid, and then draw your grid in and space it out.
Keep up with this money, they owe. And we owe whenever you can time to go out, that's fine. Okay, so if you're about.
All right, guys, so one last step before we leave today, so that we can come back and pick it up here tomorrow. Here's what I would like you to do. Once you're done with this, I want you to go ahead and develop exterior walls. What do you mean develop exterior walls? Well, let's open up the drawing. Let's go to an architectural drawing, a floor plan. Okay, this one, A1.01. Okay, now this drawing has exterior walls, right? So if I want to draw this exterior wall in my drawing, I can just go ahead and select. Right now, don't worry about what the wall is doing, other than just do this in L1, level 1, okay? I'm going to select wall, and then you can just follow however long it needs to be. Don't worry about the wall type or anything like that. Just draw your walls to duplicate what's shown in the drawings. Okay, both interior and exterior. Right now doesn't, for now. Just duplicate all the walls that you see in here. So notice this whole thing is an exterior wall. That's a glass wall. And then there is a wall that goes that way all the way across. So go ahead and draw all the walls, but only in L1. Don't worry about what it looks like or anything like that. Just create the walls. Right. So I'm gonna draw some interior walls now. Just select wall. It will give you basic generic 8 inches. Don't worry about that. But so let's say, for instance, in my model, there is that drawing. Now I don't know exactly. Okay, this one actually has detailed dimensions of where the walls are supposed to be. Now, openings, what about openings? Door openings, window openings, anything like that, ignore for now. We just want a box for the exterior walls. Don't even worry about the wall type. Don't worry about windows or anything. Just the wall. Now, notice though closely when I am drawing a wall. So now I'm drawing a wall. Let's say I'm going to draw this wall just to that grid line. Okay. Now, when I'm drawing a wall, so notice this, watch me do this real quick, please. So when I select a wall has, again, there are a few options here. It says, is it a chain? Meaning, do you want to draw a continuous wall? It says height unconnected 20 feet. Don't worry about that. But location line, notice there are a few options. It says wall center line, core center line, finish face exterior, finish face interior. For now, I'm going to select wall center line. And what that means is this 8-inch wall, when I draw it over here, 4 inches is on the top, 4 inches is on the bottom. Now, if I want to stop my wall there, just hit escape, escape again, and you're out of the wall command. Escape is on the top left-hand corner of your keyboard, right? Now, on the other hand, if I select wall and I say finish face exterior, and now if I draw that wall, the exterior side of that wall is what gets selected to that, attached to that line. Does that make sense? On the other hand, if I say wall, finish face interior, and draw a wall, let's say from going here to here, now the interior side of the wall is what gets drawn over there. That makes sense? Exterior side, interior side, center line. Those are the only things we need to know for now, and draw these walls. And notice the grid line over there. That grid line shows you where the wall is supposed to be. So for instance, I can look at this and know that the center line of the wall and the center line of the grid line are the same, right? So we just want an exterior wall box, and then any interior walls, try to model those, and then we will come back tomorrow to fix all the walls and then carry on from there.
So we can't access this from home if we go in a virtual.
You can.
What about the? I was like, say, career fair tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow or?
Yeah.
Okay, so career fair tomorrow, rules for the career fair for people to miss class.
Oh.
That's what I thought it was on Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday, let's talk about it tomorrow.
What do you want us to say that?
Save it as Revit assignment.
Project or template or?
Projects. Again, save it into your OneDrive, that way you have access to it from home.
What is that, cloud model? Cloud model is the same thing as OneDrive.
Yeah, OneDrive or Box, wherever.
You can base off like where the trailers are actually, or you can scale this. So I would say. Size it. So that's what we did on.
It's on, then you cover over.
Well, that's what, that's.
So this.
You want to write, like,
Whenever, no, that makes sense, but whenever you go out to market, do you ever have problems or staff?
Wherever I put where?
RTJ. And then you are all, you ever have problems? And then.
Wall.
Yeah, that's what they're all.
Wall.
That's a number though.
I'm just away from my golf or.
Basically.
We went down to the bottom for all the golfers and I went. And now all, only all the golf clubs are allowed to. Get that on my set. Where you can drop it, very fair. I was looking at golf balls. You're gonna go, right? You're gonna go to that one. Sorry, so you're just making the picture of the video.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And then, just add some music, like, go Friday, or it's just. We got like, I was the one with the ball.
Just like actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you do it.
And then as soon as.
And then you just.
Just scale that, double check those lines match up your. You don't have to do like, fix our fix your. And then you do. I get. Like, stopping.
I would have been here for like the next 3 hours.
No, I looked at, I was like, starting to I was like, well,
Yeah.
so the, yeah, weird. Probably the entire year. Is the wall?
I'll go get wings in here.
Easy thing to do. If you wanna, you have. Center. So. You can't really do that because. Yeah. Pretty hard.
Just click on your, thank you, that's also.
Yeah, but it's like. Thank you. That's all you need.
I know, I think that's actually.
I got just weird in here, it looks like, these are like relatively the same. But you can just stay with me. No, that, I'll last. Like again, and then they'll start to set those back. Like this.
How do you move around? Wow.
Oh, yeah, so it's like I recently had to go back to 100.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I stopped. Then I'm.
That's the biggest seller.
You're trying to.
I saved it in my was
I can understand one.
I saved money.
So I'm starting to see that I can sleep on the line.
Like, just because you did one wrong, like,
No.
open your next. That's what you need. That's what.
But if you messed up like one in.
Yeah, but if you get there, try